This is Smiles TV. Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. I'm your host, Stephanie Anthony Miles, and thank you for tuning in again. You know, we did a broadcast at the Better Family Life Center, and this is really part of that broadcast. And you're going to hear from Miranda Jones, who's the Vice President of Youth and Clinical Services at Better Family Life. She's actually from East St. Louis, Illinois, working in Missouri, so we're also bridging the gap again. Stay tuned for more smiles. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more smiles. Better Family Life, an organization doing great things in Missouri and Illinois. They are bridging the gap. They're bridging the gap for a lot of people. And Miranda, thank you for coming to Smiles Television Talk Show.
Having me.
I love your hair.
Thank you.
You know what? You're going to have to do my daughter's hair for her because that is simply beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Miranda, as the Vice President of Clinical Services, what actually is your title now?
Vice President of Youth, Family, and Clinical Services.
Okay, so what do you find yourself doing on a daily basis?
Well, my job is to work with youth. You know, my CEO, Malika Med, says that I have the biggest job at Better Family Life, and that's crafting our future. So we have the future in our hands, and you know, a lot of the things that we do at Better Family Life deal with indigent families getting, you know, jobs and trying to help with the things that are wrong with our community. And I get to work with what's right with our community, what we can do to stop, you know, people from having to get into these work programs and having to deal with the cycle of poverty. So, you know, working with youth, we start at the tender age of 4.
Do you really?
We go all the way up to 24. So we have programs that run the gamut of 4 to 24 for not only the youth, but for their families. And we also make sure that we have wraparound services, which include the mental health and clinical services.
Okay, I know on the east side because I met with Gerald Quincy Jones, and I want to thank him also again. Thank you, Gerald, for helping us to arrange this. He told me that he works closely with the high schools on the east side. Now, you over that program as well?
Absolutely. Gerald Quincy Jones has been with the agency for over 10 years as a teen pregnancy prevention coordinator. So he coordinates a lot of the programs that we deal with. We have a grant from the United States Office of Adolescent Health, and we serve 4,000 youth with medically accurate information about teen pregnancy prevention. We've been doing this now for about 10 years. We have an abstinence first approach, but we want kids to know about their body. We want them to have self-efficacy, know how to say no, how to get themselves out of sticky situations. We talk anatomy. We also talk, you know, ways to protect yourself. You know, we just feel like it's a very important program, and it's a gateway into a lot of other things. You know, we know that once, you know, kids start interacting in sexual activity, you know, so many other things come with that, you know, both physically and emotionally. So we talk about those things with youth, and it also gives us an opportunity through that program. We have our Youth Leadership Academy.
Okay.
Which
tell us, a little bit about the Youth Leadership
Yeah,
Academy.
we take kids to Trout Lodge, or last year we took them to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
We have kids from, actually we have about 50 kids from all over the region, from East St. Louis, O'Fallon, Illinois, all the way out to North County. They all come together, and they are the leaders in their school. They're the leaders for our Youth Clinical Family Services Department. And so we take them out, and they're the ones that kind of set the agenda for what we're doing. And we try to be youth-led. We want their ideas and for us to know what they think is going to impact their future.
So do you reach out to the kids, or how do they make contact with you? How do you find the youth who need the assistance?
So we typically go in through schools. So they'll see us in the classroom. We're in 22 different schools, over 28 zip codes in the area. So they'll have an educator at their school, and the principals and their teachers. So they see us that way, and we kind of connect with them in the classroom. But we also have kids. We have a dance troupe here, the Kumba Youth Performance Ensemble. We have after school programs. We serve 400 kids in after school programs daily. So there's just so many opportunities for interaction. interaction. And we have a youth website here, bflyouth.org. So youth can go there and get information about lots of our programs.
Wow. You know, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about youth and the services and activities of Better Family Life. And we want to know a little bit more about you as well.
Okay.
Don't go away. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Thank you for staying with us. We're talking with Miranda Jones from Better Family Life. She's the vice president here. And you know what? We're talking about bridging the gap. And during the break, you reminded me that you're Ann Walker's daughter. Yeah, I forgot about that. Ann is such a sweetheart.
Thank you.
And you have services and activities going on that actually started on the east side, or the concept, more or less?
You know, our inspiration, you know, is Katherine Dunham. You know, my mother being a former Katherine Dunham dancer, and I grew up going to the workshop with Ruby and going to SIU, and we had classes on Saturdays. And so, you know, I know that was such a big part of my childhood. That's something that we've strived to recreate here at Better Family Life. So we have our Saturday dance classes, and we started the Kumba Youth Performance Ensemble, and we have former Katherine Dunham dancer Vivian Elaine Anderson Watt,
right?
Who is
and you have to say
you have to say the whole thing. She's our dance, our choreographer. She is our director of arts and education here. We also have our master percussionist, which is Edward Brown, who is also East St. Louis native, and he, you know, derives a lot of his principles from Mort Cham, who is also a very, you know, in-depth person who was in the East St. Louis area. His son is Akon.
Oh, right.
You know, you know, the linkages are so important, and it was so important to me when Mr. Brown said, this is the closest thing I've seen to what we used to do, you know, years ago in East St. Louis. And that spirit, it's about the spirit.
You know what, your passion is coming out, is pouring out on the air, and so did that come from your mom?
It did, and you know, as a child, you know, I was there when Katherine Dunham did her hunger strike. I was there, sitting there, watching this, and you know, when you see someone who, you know, did a hunger strike for Haiti, someplace that's not, you know, next door. She had the passion and the will to bring awareness to what was going on in a country that had so many things that was happening. For me to be able to see that as a child, I soaked all that in, and it gave me passion, and it inspires me to make, you know, I want other kids to find their passion and find their inspiration in something, and hopefully we'll give them some things so that they can be the future leaders of the United States of America.
Wow, you know, this is excellent. And sitting here in the Better Family Life Center, looking at the mural, this is beautiful. How long has this floor been like it is now?
You know, this floor actually was untouched, so it was dirt and there was nothing. So the stairs that come up here, it was a captain's ladder that came up here. So for years it just sat and was nothing. And so we just opened this particular part of Better Family Life this past year. So it's only been 1 year. And actually you're sitting in our Small Business Incubator Center.
Wow.
So on Fridays, small businesses, people who are wanting to have small businesses come up and they get some instruction and coaching on how to do their small business. On the other side of the wall, there's small offices where startup businesses are, and then also CAB, which is the Center for African American Businesses. They're also located here on this floor to have that linkage with the small businesses.
And so where is your department, and where is Better Family Life headed? What's in the future?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I'm gonna take broad from the kids. We're all the way up. You know, nothing can stop us. We're all the way up.
That's right.
You know, and I feel that way. You know, there is, you know, with all the instability that the political landscape brings, you know, we are focused on our goal, and our mission remains the same. And it's even more important now in this political landscape for us to be strong about, you know, who we are, who we serve, and what our purpose and goal and mission is through Better Family Life. And that's, you know, making sure that African American families and urban families have access to resources and understand who they are, their culture, and they're able to, you know, make a way and a path for their future. So those are the things that we are focused on through workforce programs, youth programs, community outreach, housing, and cultural arts.
That is so well said. And thinking about our history and thinking about the past, you know, and by the time this airs, the commemoration for the 1917 race riots in East St. Louis may have passed, but Better Family Life, are you personally involved with any of those activities?
Yeah, well, my mom has been really big on the 1917 race riots years ago, and so I think her first time doing a commemoration was, had to be 10 years ago, because
Right.
I remember my daughter being there, and this is the 100th year anniversary of the 1917 race.
A lot of people may not even really
It's
know what
100
happened.
years.
Do you know a little bit about the history? The 1917 race riots in East St. Louis was one of the biggest riots in the country ever, and so we're celebrating, or would have already not celebrated, but commemorating those tragic things that occurred during that time.
Yeah, and it really stems. It stems from economics. That you have work. A lot of industries that were here, and when you brought workers to take those jobs for lower paying jobs, which are African Americans primarily coming up from the South, it's really about the clash of the people that were already here in the industries and African Americans coming up and them feeling like their space was being taken or their jobs were being taken. A lot of it stems from that, and there were a lot of other critical points that kind of set off those race riots. The thing to me, Stephanie, that is so compelling is how far we haven't come since 1917. When you look at what happened just recently with the verdict with Facile Cast,
Right.
his whole situation, and they're rioting, or not rioting, but protesting, and what happened here in Ferguson with the protest, and it's just, we haven't come far enough, and it's really scary to see that it's almost like we're going backwards instead of going forward.
Well, you know what? That's why Better Family Life, and that's why Miranda Jones is helping to bridge the gap, and we say bridging the gap with smiles.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you, Miranda. And will you come back to Smiles TV?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We had James Clark on earlier. He did say he would come back, so I won't say he did. And I didn't ask him like that, though. But your last comments actually lead well into another segment that we're having called the Smiles Credit Cafe. And just so you know, we're starting a financial literacy broadcast, which would be broadcast periodically. And we're going to be training students and parents and entrepreneurs in their finances. And we have some experts coming in. One gentleman, especially Wendy Simmons, is going to pretty much head that segue up. And it's all about economics, and we need to understand how to use what we have.
Stephanie, what you guys are doing here is so important, giving people information and empowering our community. And I can't thank you enough for having us and being at Better Family Life.
You are a sweetheart. I thank you, Miranda. Give me a hug. No handshake, give me a hug. God bless you, God keep you, and I hope you do come back to Smiles. Stay tuned, don't go away. We have much more for you.
The Smiles Television Talk Show wants to showcase your business, organization, church, and activities. If you have an interest in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show, or if you have any show ideas, contact Stephanie Anthony Miles at smilestv777@gmail.com. You may also call 618-741-3770. Tell your friends to subscribe to the Smiles YouTube channel. Let Smiles TV increase your reach. Remember, you look better with smiles.
Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. I'm your host, Stephanie Anthony Miles, and I am just elated that you decided to tune in again. Today, once again, we have What's on Your Mind with Dr. Des, our expert psychologist, Dr. Desiree Holmes. You don't want to turn away from this broadcast. We're going to be talking about how you can access mental health services and what's needed for you to do that. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin, and he was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Welcome back to Smiles, and we are going into What's on Your Mind with Dr. Desiree Holmes. today I have her on the couch because I'm going to be asking her some questions. Dr. Holmes, thank you again for coming back to Smiles. And I love your segment, and the community appears to love it as well. And we really appreciate you because you are our resident expert.
Thank you.
Dr. Des, and we've been talking about mental health stigmas.
Right.
We've discussed some problems with mental health and things of that nature. Tell our audience, how can they access services that are needed?
Right. So the last show that we did, we talked about looking at we started with stigma, then we moved into barriers, and we began to have the conversation with access. And so I wanted to have that continuation with access on this show. We talked about utilizing your primary care physician as a place of reference. I also talked about using your insurance company, calling your insurance company, asking them, first of all, what is covered? Are there any spin downs that you need to take care of? Is there any co-pays that you would be responsible for? And do, in fact, they cover your mental health? And if so, then what is that? And so I want to piggyback off of that and go a step further, because there are some additional resources that people may not be aware of in the community. First place that a person can look for is the Department of Human Services.
Okay, and that's good, because I was going to ask you what happens if you lack insurance, and what can people do?
So a great place to begin, and every state has a Department of Human Services. They may vary in what they call themselves, but pretty much it's going to be the same from state to state. And they typically have an 800 number that's associated with it. And the Department of Human Services is where you can access for public health care. So you can find out if you're eligible for it, you can find out what the services they provide, and you can ask them questions on where to direct you to. The next place that you can look at if you have mental health is also a part of the Division of Health Human Services, but it's the Division of Mental Health.
Okay.
Division of Mental Health specifically, that is where you have your public health care, and they cover children, adolescents, adults. You can ask them, again, what is it that they cover? And this is typically through what's called your MCOs, your managed care organizations. Those are your MCOs. And they tend to be your public insurances that used to historically and traditionally be, they were satisfied through like Medicaid. And so those are your MCOs. And it's calling the Division of Mental Health is where you can get that additional information. We had talked in the last show about if you needed a referral or a recommendation, where can you go? This is another place to where you can go and you can ask them on their helpline questions such as, do you have a psychiatrist in my area? Do you have a community mental health agency in my area? And if so, where are they located?
So what are some of the community services that are involved with that are in?
So community mental health, and that's a good question, because community mental health typically, again, a lot of their funding will come from the state and or federal dollars, and they're placed directly in a person's community where they live. For instance, if you live in East St. Louis, there is a community mental health agency that is directly there for that particular community. If you live, say, in other parts of St. Clair County, in the Belleville area, there is a community mental health there. Same thing if you live in Madison County. So each place typically will have their own community mental health agency, and they provide a host of services.
So are individuals able to go outside of their community? Because I'm just thinking sometimes people may fear being seen, or they may not want to be among those with whom they're familiar. So can they go to other areas that are not right in their vicinity?
They absolutely can. They absolutely can. Remember, we also talked in the last show about one of the barriers being transportation.
That's right.
And so that's where again, you want to ask and find out through your insurance coverage, do they cover transportation? And if so, then your transportation, it can be provided for and covered through your insurance company. And yes, you absolutely can go outside of your community. You don't have to remain, but many times people just feel much more comfortable because they feel like by going to a local community agency, they can identify perhaps more with their needs, because that's the community and the population that they service.
Tell you what, I need to take a quick break, but we'll come back and I want to talk about outpatient care
Okay.
versus inpatient care.
Okay, good.
Don't go away. This is What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez on Smiles Television Talk Show. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Welcome back to Smiles Television Talk Show. We are having our wonderful segment, What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez. And Dr. Dez, our resident expert, and like I told you earlier, I have her on the couch. And Dr. Dez, quite often people may not necessarily need to be hospitalized.
True.
Sometimes maybe they can get help
Right.
without actually going and staying overnight in the hospital. So tell us a little bit about outpatient care versus inpatient care.
That's really important to know because you're right. Most people think that the first line of defense is hospitalization, and actually it is not. There are levels of care. Hospitalization is one level of care, and that typically is reserved for the person whose severity of symptoms where they're very acute, they're in a crisis stage, and they truly are needing to be hospitalized either for safety for themselves, safety of others, because maybe they're suicidal or they're homicidal. But that's not the case for everyone. And so I'm glad that you're asking that question because we really need to clear that up. For instance, there are other outpatient services, IOP. IOP stands for Intensive Outpatient Services.
Okay.
What that is, and it's different from regular individual, and I'll talk about that in a moment. IOP is intensive because the person comes to the program Monday through Friday. So it is 5 days a week for a minimum of 3 to 4 hours. And typically what that consists of is psychotherapy, and it's all group. So it's group psychotherapy, it's group psychoeducation. You typically will have a psychiatrist that you have an assessment with.
And once again, this is called
Intensive Outpatient Services.
intensive outpatient.
Intensive. And it's intensive because it's 5 days a week for a minimum of 3 to 4 hours a day. That's why it's intensive. And it's all group based. So the group is a part of the treatment itself. So you do have a therapist, that's your group facilitator, but then you have the group that's very supportive. And so you learn from the group members because in essence, they get to share their stories, they get to share their coping, they get to share what has worked for them, what doesn't work, and then you feel like you're not in it by yourself. You feel like you're not alone because someone else is going through something very similar.
And those patients who have to be in for longer care, how does that tend to work?
So usually, again, it can be, now what's good about IOP is because it can be a step down from hospitalization. So it's a person that's still needing continuity of care but does not need to be in the hospital any longer. So then they'll step down to IOP. And the reason that a person typically will come to IOP is because they may still be experiencing an acute phase, but not so to the point to where they have to be 24-hour care. That's the difference. But still needing someone to have eyes and ears on them to watch them in the event that perhaps they might start to decline, then you can go ahead and get them into a hospital right away.
So speaking of having eyes and ears on them, and you're talking about from a professional standpoint,
Right.
but you're at home,
Right.
and your child or your spouse or your relative is acting out in some way. What means of emergency help can that individual get, and how does that look?
So that happens more often than what people think. And you're right, it could be a child, it could be an adolescent, it could be an adult, family member, friend. It doesn't discriminate. Usually what will happen is a person can dial 911 because you may need the assistance of the police to come in. And if that's the case, then an ambulance can come to your home, and then they can assist with getting that person to your nearest emergency department. And having that person go to the emergency department, there they would be medically cleared to make sure that there are no medical reasons as to why this person may be having a, let's say, psychotic episode. And so you want to make sure that it isn't medical, because sometimes psychotic episodes could actually have a medical origin.
I see.
Right. And so you want to rule that out. And the only way that you're going to rule that out is for a medical doctor to go ahead, provide an evaluation, and make sure that medically nothing is going on with that person.
In our conversations, you've listed a couple of organizations and phone numbers in which individuals can make contact. Can you give those organizations names again, and any lasting words from you?
So again, if you need additional resources, a great place to start is with the Department of Human Services. Every state has one. There typically is an 800 number that is associated with that. You can call them, DHS, and the acronym is DHS, Department of Human Services, and they can let you know if you're eligible for services. You can take it one step further if you are needing a resource for mental health. And so DHS, Department of Human Services, has an additional division called the Division of Mental Health. And there you can go ahead and access an 800 number, and you can call them and you can ask about what's available in your immediate area. There is also, again, the last time when we were on the show, I had mentioned NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. They also have an 800 number. And then also what I want to mention is that the Division of Mental Health, what's interesting about that is it's grouped regionally, and we do have one right here in our region in the Metro East area, and it's located in Alton.
Okay.
And so there is both an 800 number and a local number, 618 number, that you can also call and ask about mental health services in the area.
What's on your mind with Dr. Des? And I'm loving this segment, and we want you to know that we care, and we want you to be able to access additional help when needed. We're trying to show you that stigmas don't have to exist. We just are trying to help you get help. Dr. Des, I want to thank you again for another wonderful segment. You know, we never have enough time,
Right.
but we'll do this again.
Thank you.
And I want you to stay tuned for more smiles.
IDEX Media does a lot. From IDEX Photography to IDEX Films. We help create forever memories and forever impressions. Imagination, image a world. IDEX Media.
Awesome sauce. Yeah, baby.
The Smiles Television Talk Show wants to showcase your business, organization, church, and activities. If you have an interest in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show, or if you have any show ideas, contact Stephanie Anthony Miles at smilestv777@gmail.com. You may also call 618-741-3770. Tell your friends to subscribe to the Smiles YouTube channel. Let Smiles TV increase your reach. Remember, you look better with smiles.
This is Smiles TV.